Today's guest is Sam Valme. He is a senior director for U.S. channel sales within the MSP team at AvePoint, which is focused on optimizing SaaS operations and enabling secure collaboration. Sam and I have known each other for quite a few years. We're both in the DC area within the Microsoft AvePoint's tech space. We've interacted at a number of events. So it's been great to getting to know you over the years, Sam. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. It's always fun, to spend some time with an old friend, kind of talking a bit about the progression, the career progression, which seems so long, but so short all at the same time.
Well, and on that note, for those who have not met you, had a chance to talk to you, maybe had a drink with you or hung out with you, talk a bit about your background, who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Yeah. So I was raised in, excuse me, it's getting over a little cold. I was raised in rural Virginia, a place called Fauquier County. If you're from the area or Central Virginia, you know where that is, a little town called Bealton. But I was actually born in South Jersey. My mom moved us to Virginia to be closer to the family around the time I was 7. So I was born in Jersey. I was really raised in Virginia. So, my background going back as far as high school was just like every other kid. I was a Boy Scouts, karate, every sport known to man. My mom had a theory and said if you keep them busy, they can't get in trouble, which for the most part worked out. She also taught me that you can learn something from everybody as long as you're paying attention. Sometimes it's what to do and what not to do. So, my entrance into IT really came from a number of looking back on it, it was a number of mentors, or call them kind of those key pillars and decisions to be made as you're going through high school and even going into the college years, where people kind of helped me, guide me along the way. So as an example, when I was younger, I wanted to spend more time with my uncle, who was really into cars, but I didn't have a car or anything. So in high school, I was like, I want to take this automotive class. And my guidance counselor was like, why? You'd have to ship you to another school to do that. And I was like, well, so I can learn how to fix my car. And she was like, Sam, you really like computers. We want you to take these computer classes, and then one day you're going to pay someone to fix your car. And I was like, that doesn't solve the problem. I wanted to but fine, whatever. So I got more into computers that way. One of the first jobs I had was actually at Best Buy when I was 16. I've been working ever since 16 years old. And I started off all the car audios, thinking I wanted to get more in automotives. And I quickly found myself into the computers department because there was an opening. And then I had the opportunity to become a manager of the gaming department, which at the ripe old age of 18, gaming, managing. But I applied for the position and I was told like, hey, we think that you could really do that, but you're a bit overqualified to be a supervisor at 18. Now, Jeremy, I'm not sure if you ever got that speech, but at 18 doesn't make any sense. No. What they said instead was, why don't you try out Geek Squad instead? Right. So stuff like that, that's those kind of small decisions throughout my life. I've just noticed people kind of having an eye out of what might be a better path for you. But those are kind of the entry steps of me getting into the IT field.
That's very interesting. Yeah, that you would have somebody who, well, must have expressed your interest in your capabilities well enough that they were able to say, that's not you, this is you. And that's fantastic.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, at the time, didn't feel that way, but it's one of those things. I think as you get older, you look back and you realize that, yeah, like people did see that in you. You did express it in some way. And I think also because of the timing, we were looking at tech as this up and coming future thing for people that were more open-minded and have an opportunity to really have a growth mindset. And for whatever it was, people saw that in me in a number of areas of my life. Yeah.
So then I heard you mention college. Did you went the college route? Did you pick a college based on any specific criteria?
So in hindsight, I guess I took a fairly simplistic view to college when I was going to school. Once again, I grew up out in Fauquier. We didn't have, it wasn't terrible or anything, but I had a great childhood, I think. But being older, I realized we didn't have as many resources as like going to Prince William or Fairfax County in northern, closer you get into DC and Virginia.
Right.
And a standard recommendation was actually go to community college. For a number of folks, it was, hey, do 2 years of community college, and in Virginia, we have this guaranteed acceptance program, guaranteed. If you have a high enough GPA, any state college essentially is going to take you in as a junior. And then the real selling point there was you're going to spend like a third of the amount of money because you're not doing the first 2 years at a public institution. And The way I was raised was you're going to have to pay for any type of schooling that you want to do. So having started working at 16, learning how much things cost, it was very appealing to me graduating from high school. So I went to Northern Virginia Community College, went there for 2 years, got my associate's degree, and then transferred to George Mason University. And all this while I've been working, right? So I started working at Best Buy, moving into the Geek Squad department. Then I ended up getting a job at Apple, working as a genius for a while, a mobile genius. And right around the time that I was graduating with my associates and going into George Mason, I got a job at Dell as a software engineer. So now you run into the age-old issue of being the tech guy that, like, you start to diverge. You don't need to have the degree as much because now I've kind of gotten the job that I would have gotten 2 years after finishing my bachelor's. And also keep in mind, I'm paying for school like in real time.
Right.
So, leaving Apple, going to Dell, I effectively doubled the amount of money that I was making. And I was like, hey, instead of me taking on more debt, I could start paying off some of the debt I incurred. Also, at that time, I got engaged. I was looking to get married, and a wedding coming up too. So that's where I really made the decision to let the college route kind of fade out. I got my associates, right? I had a year at George Mason, but from there, I just started continuing down my professional career and didn't end up finishing the bachelor's.
Oh, interesting. And I actually appreciate that, right? There are a lot of people in the IT careers who don't have, I've met quite a few people who don't have any college degree, right? They just went straight technical chops. They got certification. Some people go to technical schools. Certainly within the space you and I work in, right? We're not doing the sciencey stuff.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
We're not doing the sciencey stuff. There are some shortcuts.
Yes. Yes. And that's one thing that I learned from Dell when I was working there, because I call myself a software engineer, right? But that's when I quickly realized when people say software engineering, they immediately think coding. They immediately think like, the ones and zeros, building, that kind of thing. Well, with software, it's different because most software companies, independent software vendors or ISVs, generate their own intellectual property or IP. You can't go to school and learn that. You have to either get a certification that's made public or work at the institution. In my company, at the time it was Dell, I worked in the software division for a solution called Dell Aperture, which was server-based backup and recovery software, right? So now you can see me making the connections to AvePoint. So they had one product. It was called Dell Aperture. It was the name of the company. So really, you become an expert in learning and not, the overarching kind of Microsoft ecosystem, but you learn how to become an expert in that software and how it interacts with the other hyperscalers like Microsoft and Amazon. And really, once you understand that language and those terms and how these systems connect with one another, you have the foundational knowledge you need to really go to any software vendor and to then learn, okay, I have my platform understanding of Microsoft as far as how it connects to third-party software. How does this new company then interact with Microsoft or AWS or Google or so on and so forth?
That's interesting. Yeah. And Dell is a big one. Dell is a big beast. They're still going strong, and they'll probably continue to go strong for a very long time. How long did you spend at Dell, and did you have a variety of roles there?
Yeah, so I was there for, looking back on it, I was only there for like 13 months, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Spoiler, I just celebrated my 10 years at AvePoint this last week. And I was going back to like all my jobs, and I realized I was only at Dell for 13 months, but I had 2 jobs when I was there. I started off I call it software engineering. Now I know, being in the industry longer, what I was really doing was called solution engineering. I was in the sales cycle, but I was the tech guy on the sales cycle. I wasn't developing any software, right? So it's just you're still on technical stuff, but it's just a different side of the coin versus being on the development side. So I started off doing that. And then I moved into what they call enterprise. I was an enterprise technical support analyst. So that was my first venture into actually doing services with the tech company. So what happened is, when I was doing the software engineering, I was helping sell the software. And then when I was in the enterprise support, customers who had purchased, I helped install, configure, and set up their initial backup job to the software to make it go, to make sure they got some type of ROI out of the solution. And then shortly after that, like I mentioned, about 13 months, I ended up moving into my position at AvePoint, going back into more of the software engineering side.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've been at AvePoint, you said 10 years, which congratulations. That's a great achievement. And AvePoint's a fantastic company. I imagine you've had a variety of roles with AvePoint then.
Oh yeah, so this is this is where two roads really started a version of wood, no pun intended. So I started off, as I mentioned, in solution engineering, right? So I was doing more of the pre-sales work engineering. I started off specifically in AvePoint public sector, which is just a subsidiary of a larger company. As you mentioned, we're in the DMV area, so that was our public sector arm. We did a lot of great business, had a really great team, and it was really cool because Dell is a large organization. It's very easy to feel like you're just a number in a spreadsheet. Whereas at that point, we're a smaller organization, smaller compared to Dell. So it really allowed me to build more relationships and actually connect with more leaders in the team. And ultimately, what it allowed me to do is to have the ability to take on more and more roles. It started off with the solution engineering piece, then quickly moved into what we call strategic advisory. So that's more along the lines of not just looking at the software, but also helping to create solutions with other services arms that we have. Maybe not just the kind of main products that AvePoint sold, but maybe some newer up and coming solutions. In some cases, we didn't necessarily have the software solution internally. It was like pieces of Microsoft that we had to put together with some third-party tools. So as an example, I created this solution called Podium, which essentially was Azure Media Services compared to with a video encoder that allowed us to do video live streaming before like Teams broadcasting was there, or LinkedIn live streaming was there using Azure. So I got to do a lot of that cool stuff, worked on some cool projects, got to go to Boston and work with the mayor of a small town in that area. I went to Hawaii to work with the state on some cool projects, and I got to travel. I've been to, I think last time I counted 27 states in the US, and really a lot of that time was when I was doing the strategic advisory role. From there, I moved straight into our actual services division. So with that, my first role was working with partners. At the time, this is, I'm going to say around 2015, 2016, just to kind of give you some dates as an anchor. AvePoint didn't actually do services for what we call the small and medium business. They only really did it for mid-market and enterprise, larger type of organizations. When I say services, AvePoint sells software. We would sell services to install, configure, but also help migrate customers from like Amazon to Microsoft, or different infrastructure spaces too. So, but we didn't offer those services. So this was actually my foray into actually working with partners. So I started up a division called SMB Services, and essentially what I did was I had a number of partners of AvePoints in the country, and we would resell their services to SMB customers. We had a simple line card. We have like 4 or 5 partners, and we just resold their simple services in scale to really prove out and kind of scale out our services arm, which really opened my eyes to working with the channel and the possibility of taking more of that stuff, because I really enjoyed not only taking advantage of the great solutions and software that AvePoint had, but then also essentially having the world's your oyster as far as any partner that is also an expert in the fields to be able to take advantage of what it is that they do and give them opportunities working with customers. So it was really a win-win on both sides. And then I eventually, after doing that for a year or two, found my way into being the manager for solution engineering for public sector, which is actually where you and I met, Jeremy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you were doing, I think, a lot of sessions locally, right? Educational sessions locally. You had a great team that was bringing in speakers to talk about things, and I was there to learn.
Yeah, that was a fun time. I had a team of 4 or 5 members at the time, and I think rolling into that was my first foray into proper management, and actually having individual contributors under me. And what I learned about that was compassion as a leader and empathy. And I think that people hear those words said, but it's one thing to say them and like read the book and be like, yep, I took the course on LinkedIn. And it's a totally other thing to actually work with folks and really make sure that you look them in the eye and they feel that interaction. And empathy and compassion is something that's practiced. It's not really learn. You can't just read about it. You have to be in the situations. And I was lucky enough to have a manager at the time who had me read a number of different books, 101 Tough Conversations to Have with Employees, a lot of the E-Myth manager type books. That was one of the things he really used as a kind of a bedrock to our education. It's not only, of course, being an expert in the solutions and helping to drive the number, but it's also making sure that you have a team that feels taken care of and that feels supported and that they have a goal and they can grow with the organization too.
That is so important. As somebody who's in management myself, right, and equally, I'm big into compassion and empathy as a tool for making sure I know my people well and that they know I care about them and truly care about them, not just say I care about them. That's fantastic that you had a mentor who kind of cued you into that. And I'm assuming, I make an assumption that paid off, right, in terms of how your staff responded to it.
Yeah, it absolutely did. I had my fair share of people frustrated, yelling, screaming, doing all types of things, but it's sometimes you have to allow people that escape and to be human for a moment and to like acknowledge yeah, there's some real things that we have to do on both sides of the fence to improve processes, because when you look at everything from a sense of just corporate unbothered, you start to lose connection with people. So you really got to make sure that you're practicing that in real time. So it made a big difference. And it really allowed me to grow as an individual, but also just as I like to say as a human in general, right? It's basic human stuff. But yeah, it was really impactful. From there on engineering, that's when so you mentioned I was doing like kind of sessions and everything. So one of the things that we did was we actually had a number of partners in the DMV. Once again, I was still doing the engineering managing, but we had a number of partners actually coming in, and they wanted to learn about our software, learn about our solutions. And once again, I'm in solution engineering. My team's solution engineering. We're in sales, right? Let's not make it anything more than it is. Our job is to be on calls and talk to customers and sell stuff. Well, partners just wanted to kind of learn about our software. Unless there's any type of like actual business model in place, it's not exactly how we were designed to get paid. So I essentially, every Thursday, I was like, all right, y'all want to learn about our technology, our solutions. So every Thursday, I would have partners come into our office, and we had a training room in our Arlington office. And I had, any given Thursday between 4 and 12 people, kind of in a classroom style. And I would pick one of our solutions and pick a subject, and we would just kind of go down the line. And I ran those sessions for probably 2 years, just constantly. Every Thursday, we would kind of run through it, and it was consistent. We would do it, and we would always have folks. Sometimes folks that have been there before, a lot of the times folks that were new. I ended up also getting in and doing like formal. I brought down our CTO at the time and did a session with him and brought in some of the other partners in the area. And these partnerships were really just organizations that might refer us business here or there, or they might, help with a sale, because in public sector, you have a lot of teaming agreements and you have a lot of people that go on contracts together. So it was more for that side of it. But after a while, I had a team of 4, and I would bring them in to occasionally present with me. Some of these partners were regurgitating back this information as well as my team. And I was like, I'm pretty sure they could do a customer demo at this point. It's been 8 years. And if they couldn't, I'm a terrible trainer, right? Or at least an entertaining one, because they keep coming back, right? So I went to my VP of sales at the time, and my team was pretty, competent. They were really settling in. Everything was going well on the engineering side. So I said, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to see if I can take some of this training and education we'll be giving these partners and actually convert that into revenue. And I wrote up a little job description, an idea, put together a 30, 60, 90, 12-month plan, all this stuff. And they were like, you could have just, made this a phone call. Didn't have to be such a long email. Sure, go ahead and try it, right? And we did. Without going into the numbers, the initial quota I potentially gave myself, I ended up doing 5 times that amount of revenue. It was substantial for us. And even to this day, some of those initial partners that I ended up converting from just kind of being like onesie twosie services partners to actually being resale partners are still with us to this day. And that was, back in 2019. And that's really when I got deeper into the channel side of the technology, learning how to work with partners. From then, we're about to go public. We bring in our first, for all intents and purposes, of chief channel officer. I end up moving from kind of this made up role of partner enablement program manager to formally the global director of our partner program, partner experience. I essentially write our partner program into existence and get the world to operate on the same sheet of music. Because up until now, every region essentially was working with partners in their own kind of shape and way that kind of worked for their business. So we all got everyone on the exact same program, standardized all the rates, standardized all the contracts, launched our first partner portal. Oh, I should say, relaunched our really official partner portal, and created things like our certification program. And we did all of that within the matter of 12 months. We covered so much ground in that project of starting off our partner program. It's probably one of the largest achievements I've had in my career. And what that allowed me to do is, because I was primarily just working in public sector, when I took on that global role, I got to work with folks from all over the world. So in our DACH region, Germany, in the UK, we had folks at the time, Singapore, Vietnam, all over the world. We got to really engage and make sure, Japan, that this program that we were creating was actually going to fit their needs. So it expanded my network dramatically, getting to work with not only our partner folks in those different offices, but also our partners too. I've had the opportunity to go to the Netherlands and lead one of our partner technical advisory councils out there and meet some of those folks. So this is a fantastic opportunity. And I did that for about 2 years. And then finally, that, as a lot of projects do, kind of settled, and moved now into being the senior director for our channel sales team in North America, focused specifically on the MSP vertical. So taking all that foundational kind of program stuff that I put together and now translating that into getting more partners, kind of like I did back at the beginning, into more business plans and actually generating revenue with all the education that we provided them.
Wow. And you have a track record, right? No, you do well in one area, they always expect more.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a common thing. So like I've had 7 in the 10 years I was at the organization, I've had 7 different roles. So yeah.
But you seem good at it, Sam. I mean, you've got a personality that works well with it. You're great with people. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited that that's going well for you.
Yeah, I think it's good. Looking back on the journey, one thing, and in the meantime, right, while we're doing all this stuff for work, I also started our first ERG, which is AvePoint. We call it BAE, Black AvePoint Excellence, around 2020, I believe. We started that ERG group, which your daughter Izzy obviously is a part of and supports, which is fantastic. A lot of help from her, a number of our members. So I had the opportunity to found and still lead to this day that group. We've done a number of sponsorships. We do an annual Juneteenth event. The first 2 years we had a cookout. This past year we moved and got some air conditioning because it was so hot, and actually rented out a restaurant in Reston and had like more of a formal gala type thing, and sponsored some children who are going to a lot of Ivy League schools and really helping them kind of navigate the path of being a first-time American, working through the system. So that's another piece of it too, is when you're with an organization and you've had a little bit of success with the day job, it affords you more time to kind of take on extracurriculars, which is one of the reasons I do feel such an affinity towards my organization. Is it's not just, you hit the numbers, you got paid. There's also, hey, if you have an idea, we'll give you some rope to go ahead and try it out with. And I don't take for granted how special that is. And it really does make a difference. And I would definitely challenge anybody at any organization, if they want to do things outside of the job description and role, don't just say something, do something with it, because we can all do a little bit. We can all make some type of impact. I try to tell folks, when you think about changing the world, it seems impossible because there's any type of issue going on at a given time. Just open your phone and you can go down a rabbit hole. So instead of trying to think about changing the world, just think about changing someone's world. And that kind of makes it a little more in the perspective of what you can actually do to affect change with somebody's life.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. You've also done interns for that program.
Yes, yes. So with Bay, we've had now, this will be our third year having an intern, our very first intern. We ended up, she became a full-time employee right afterwards, which has been fantastic. Our second intern, he recently just got a job in the tech industry and moved down to North Carolina and started off. It was actually really cool. Our second intern, he ended up transitioning. He was a business major and he really wanted the summer internship because he wanted to get into technology. So this internship is what allowed him to actually leverage that and transition into more of a tech role. And I'm also, happy to say that we're beyond even just the United States. So, Bay, we also have a chapter in the United Kingdom, and this is the second year we've actually had a career day, which is not career day, career week. So we have two students in the UK, a great organization that we partner with there. They have two students come through and not just meet the technical folks, but HR, they meet with sales, they meet with the leadership team, and they get to see and talk to so many different types of people at a tech company to kind of expand their mind. And the reason I really enjoy that program that we do in the UK is because, kind of skip this part, but when I was in high school, I actually got to go to a managed service provider for a day as a career day. And it was one of my I was super happy of it. It was a Facebook photo of mine. But that's actually how I learned, oh, being in IT isn't just coding all day. They do a lot more than that. And to bring it even further, that same MSP is actually a partner of AvePoint's today under my team.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Full
Wow.
circle.
I'm impressed. I mean, I through my daughter, sure, I get to hear a lot about what you're doing at the organization. So I want to make sure you had a chance to speak about that because it is a big accomplishment that has direct impact on people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes we take it for granted. And that's one thing that's, throughout my career as well, I didn't, ever since that first career day, and even the positions that I achieved, I thought when I got my job at AvePoint, like this was like the most amount of money. I was like 20 years old. Keep in mind, I was making like $11 an hour at like Apple,
Right.
13 at the time, and like having a salary at 20 years old or however old I was like this crowning achievement. I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild, and that just comes from not coming from a place where people talk about finances at that scale or have same opportunities. So those kind of career days and allowing people to kind of see what it's really like and give exposure to a day in a life that helps expand especially children's mind or kids' minds so that they understand their opportunities. So the more that we can continue to succeed in our day jobs and we can have these opportunities to provide more of those opportunities to students, two students at a time in the UK, an intern over the summer here in the US, whatever we can do makes a difference.
That's amazing. So as you've gone through this career, what's something that you've seen that, you went, gosh, I wish we did that differently, right? It's not very efficient, or there's a better way to do that. What might that be for you? And I'll even say this, maybe that the thing you think should be changed is too big to be changed like all at once, right? It's something that we need to really ponder, and you're just going to call our attention to it and maybe start a conversation. What might that be for you?
Yeah. So there's a lot. Like the world is a complicated place, and this is with I guess no it's not necessary to say because this is just my opinion. But what I've often noticed is that there's a lot of distractions that we have, us versus them, this versus the other, right? There's a lot of, but ultimately, when you really boil it down to it, it comes down to this sense of the haves and the have-nots. Who has control and who desires to have more control of their lives? So I think that as, even outside of just like the tech world and people, we have to sometimes not always fall for the easy trip of like what helps generalize groups and makes the us versus them, and really just think about how can we help give other people not necessarily equal opportunity, but equitable opportunity. But the hard part about that is it takes time to sit down and understand where people are coming from to figure out how much assistance they actually need. So I think that a lot of that starts off in schools, education. I think that we as a group need to do a better job identifying students that could potentially use some additional assistance, not even just at a county level, but also in a school by school level, in a classroom by classroom level. Clearly, that requires a lot more property taxes and funding. So I know it's a big challenge. But if we take the time to help expand students' minds younger so they can actually see what they're capable of, and they're not just kind of like, going to the next thing because it's what you're supposed to do, but they actually have a vision when they're younger and they're encouraged to do so. I think we could resolve a lot of the challenges that we face around diversity, that we face around inclusion, if we really take the time to work with students when they're at their most impressionable.
That's a great thought, right? That and timely, as we've come out of COVID, the United States has had a drop in our math scores, our English scores, which isn't going to help us in the long run for preparing young minds to come in and work where we work, right? In the gov space or in the product space. We need them, right? We need young, fresh blood with great new ideas and energy, because as we get older, we're not going to have that energy.
Yeah, and we face this challenge too. A lot of organizations do. When we look at people getting into the IT world, we look at diversity, it's always a challenge. And we realize it's often not a lack of will from organizations. Like, of course, I want to have more diverse staff. Like, obviously, I want to check that box. The problem is the application pool.
Yeah.
The problem is getting the applicants who are really signing up. And then part of that is the applicants feeling confident that they will be accepted into the role, right? And then a lot of that is them having access to the tools to be able to then say they are qualified. So it's this cascading effect that you have when you don't start with the mindset of, I can do this, I have a path to get the skills, so that of course I'm going to apply everywhere, because of course I can make it in, right? A lot of folks, they cut themselves short, they stop, or they're told once or twice that, like, no, you can't, or you should, really, kind of lower your expectations. And that really stunts a lot of the opportunity. And going back to it, if we just try to make everything even across the board, and we don't take a look at, why am I not getting a lot of African-American or women applying for this role, right? Where, like, these, if I look at the demographics of the state, of the city that I'm in, right, the idea would be that I wouldn't, right? Let's take a look at where the applicants are coming from at a collegiate level. Let's look at where those colleges are getting intake from high schools. I see a massive drop off here, right? What's the guidance counseling program? Because at the end of the day, that guidance counselor told me to get into computers. I didn't realize how lucky I was at that age to actually have someone guide me, say, hey, you would be really good at this, right? I think this is what's going to be best for you because you have it, right? That those kind of conversations don't, not everybody gets those. And thinking back, and it's a shame because it was so impactful in my life. I don't even remember the lady's name to this day, but it's those kind of conversations that you may think, you go home after work and how was work, babe? I have no idea. It was fine. I told some kid to take a computer class. And here we are talking, 15 years later off of one small conversation before break.
Wow. So what's next, Sam? What's next for you? What's next for AvePoint?
Well, AvePoint, we're just corporate juggernaut going to $1 billion, baby. Again, I think that's it. For me, it's always the same. I want to challenge. I want to grow. I want to make an impact. I want people to have fun along the way. That's the reason why I've had so many opportunities and roles. So as of right now, the challenge is for us to continue to work with our MSP partners here in the US. I want to expand out our channel practices even further, working with systems integrators, large account resellers, a whole number of different partners. I think I really found my passion and stride, which is working in the channel, working with partners. I think that from a scalability perspective, it's how you've seen every large organization to this day, right? Microsoft lives through its partners. Google lives through AWS, right? Any of these large hyperscalers, it's through partners. So I think that's, for me, where I found myself really being gravitating towards. And I'm hoping to contribute as many of those successes and wins to the bottom line for AvePoint. So ultimately we can continue to impact our community as we do today, and hopefully further beyond.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Sam, for coming on the podcast. It's always a joy to catch up with you. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jeremy.